Yeah, this is the steak that beat Bobby Flay on Iron Chef. But before I explain myself, we've got to get this Cowboy ribeye steak marinating in the most magical concoction you've ever had. So now to beat Bobby Flay, you need a Cowboy ribeye. You need a thick boy too. I didn't write the rules. I'm just making the same steak I grew to be obsessed with. Now the first thing we're going to do is salt the steak. I want to make sure it's well salted, not only to season it, but that salt sort of pulls moisture out, just like we do when we dry brine it. Then that salt mixes with the moisture and the marinade ingredients and gets sucked back into the steak. So before we add those other ingredients, I want to make sure it gets well seasoned. Next up, we basically have the only other two ingredients that make this the greatest steak ever. Cayenne pepper, brown sugar, melt together on that steak to create a spicy brown sugar glaze. This steak is the epitome of sweet, spicy, salty. Now I know some people are scared of cayenne and you may be scared to put a decent amount on, but we're gonna put a load of sugar on this. So it's going to be balanced. It's gonna be sweet with a little kick at the end, hits you in the back of the throat. Just gently coat the surface. I've added too little in the past, can't really taste it. Then of course our brown sugar. And now we're basically gonna take all this beautiful brown sugar and we're gonna really get it on there. And now what's gonna happen, that brown sugar is gonna mix with everything and become a glaze, like a liquid, like a syrup that is glazing this entire thing. So first, I just want to get it covered in the brown sugar, essentially a half of one of those boxes of brown sugar. And now once that brown sugar sort of melts into that glaze, you could cook it right away. It's not gonna be that great. To make it great, we're gonna have to let this sit in the refrigerator. Every now and then, take a peek, give it a flip, kind of glaze it. We're gonna put that in there for 3 days, uncovered. You could do it for 1 to 2, but 3 days is going to get you optimal results. So if you're hosting a barbecue and you want to do something impressive, to me 3 days isn't a big deal. Not for something special like this. So the next day we're gonna give it a check. Keep giving it some love. See how that brown sugar is sort of turned into a syrup? That's what we're looking for. Now what I just want to do is take some of that little brown sugar slush on the bottom. I just want to make sure all the surface gets nicely coated in that sugar. Now it's gonna go back in the fridge. Now this is what that steak looks like after 3 days. And like I said, every day we're just gonna try and glaze it over until we get to this stage. How good does that look? This should be a flavor bomb. Now, of course, you could serve this with whatever you want to serve it, vegetables, different sauces. I prefer it as is. Only thing left now to do is get this fire started. So I'm gonna take one of my fire starters. Sometimes I like to do 2 to speed it up and get my chimney over it. Again, we're using some Fogo charcoal. I'm gonna fill up that chimney. Jeez. I'm gonna take this big guy, throw that in here. Then I'm gonna fill up the charcoal basket. And we're just gonna go ahead and get that fire started. Now again, what we're gonna need is a 2-zone cooking setup. Whether you have a Weber kettle or something like this with one of these baskets, that's gonna work. We want a cool zone over here and then a hot zone over here. This is where we're gonna sear the steak. Once it's got the nice sear, it's gonna go over to the indirect side and slow cook. Think of this as like your stove top and this is your oven. Now, first off, I gotta give credit to the originator of this recipe, a prominent chef here in Westchester, Peter Kelly. Ran a restaurant just a block away from my home currently called X2O, an amazing location on the water, city skyline views. My brother was one of the chefs there. I remember taking the first bite of this steak and remembering like all other steaks became less impressive. Back when Iron Chef was at its peak, season 4, episode 7 had Bobby Flay competing against Peter Kelly, and Peter Kelly brought out the big guns and served this. And as good as Bobby is with his meats, he was no competition for this steak. So because this steak beat Bobby Flay and the restaurant Peter used to serve this steak at has sadly closed, this is why we're making the steak for you today, so you can enjoy it all summer long. If you ever get one of these air guns, give it a little blow, it'll sort of supercharge the heating process. What you're looking for is the coals in the chimney to become white hot. Now we pour that on top of the other coals. The chimney is like the starter coals, and here we're gonna allow those coals to get the other coals screaming hot. Place this on the indirect side. This is gonna catch all the grease that drips on. It's gonna sort of protect the inside of the grill, make sure no mold builds up from fat leaking down at the bottom. And then we've got the grate. Again, we've got a steak that's got sugar, so when we're searing it here, this grate slides, so I can just easily switch the steak off to the indirect side without having to shove my hand in fire. Also important to make sure that the damper is open. For now, we're gonna close it later, but that's gonna allow that airflow to get in. Make sure those coals get nice and hot. So we're gonna get it out of the glaze, let some of that excess drip off. And since there's so much sugar, we're trying to balance between charred and burnt, right? So what I'm gonna do, throw this right on the fire. But I just threw it on hot grill grate, right? And I don't really want hot grill grate. So after a little bit of a sear, I'm gonna spin it. Let it sit on cold grates, right? You see those grill marks? That's not what we want. We want the ambient heat of the flame to brown the surface of the meat. So we're gonna let it sear on that cold grate side for about 30 seconds to a minute, then slide it around. Then we're gonna take the bone, flip it back on to the hot heat. We're just gonna repeat that until we get the most beautiful sear on this steak. That's looking better. And we're doing a front sear rather than a reverse sear. We're gonna sear and get that really beautiful color on the surface of the meat. Then we're gonna let it slowly finish cooking on the indirect side. And that char, like I want that char. I want a little bit of that like burnt caramel flavor, but it's not gonna be burnt. Promise you, this is gonna taste incredible. Maybe 1 or 2 more times, never letting it go on one side for more than about a minute. That's what I'm talking about. Just wanna make sure I got some nice even browning on all sides. I'm gonna take that bone side and use that bone as a protector, right? Then I'm gonna take a thermometer, just gonna stick it in there. Gonna add that sugar. And now we can just bring this up to a boil, and then that can become a glaze. Once it comes up to a boil, it's safe to eat again, safe to use as a sauce or a glaze. So now it's seared, we got a thermometer in, and it's reading 76 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to close the lid, crack the vent at the top, and we're gonna close the vent at the bottom. I'm looking to kind of cook it at around somewhere under 400 degrees. And as soon as this hits like 111, 112 degrees, then I'm gonna open up the lid and let it carry over cook. Warm up my butter, we're gonna call it a day. Around 400. If you wanna control the heat, you want the heat to go up, you open this, and then you wanna go down, you close it, and the same goes for down here. If you wanna let more air in, you open it. If you wanna let less air in and lower the heat, you close it. So we just hit 111. Basically, the way that I think about it is in this kind of cooking method, this size steak, if I pull it out at 111, 112, it should carry over, cook, and stop around 132, which to me is a perfect medium rare. So I'm just gonna open the lid and allow it to carry over, cook, just over on the edge, right? Sometimes what I like to do is just hit it with a little bit of a glaze again. Then I just like to kiss it, kind of re-engage that sear. Take my butter and start melting it. Just gonna pull it off the grate. Looks like it's carryover cooking a little quicker. So gonna get it away from the heat, let it cool on a plate. What I'm actually trying to do here is create a little bit of a clarified butter to spread on my sliced beef. And what we're trying to do is separate the milk solids from the milk fat. So all that white stuff, that's the milk solids. All you can do quickly to make a quick clarified butter is just kind of strain them out. Not perfect, but that's gonna do the trick. Now to clean our grate, we're gonna use the Scrub Daddy steam scrubber. You don't wanna use bristles ever, those can get stuck in your throat. This uses steam. Watch how nice it works. 131, slowing down beautifully. That's good for me. So first we're gonna do is cut it off the bone. Just gonna follow it all the way down. So first we got the rib cap and we got the ribeye. And then we've got this little piece here that I usually reserve for snacks. So I'm gonna separate the rib from the rib cap. There's usually some gristle in between. I like to try and remove some of that gristle and then cut them into little cubes. Then we got that center cut. Again, I just trim a little bit of the gristle. I'm just gonna cut it into beautiful little slices. Place that onto our platter as well. And all we gotta do, just baste with a little bit of butter. You see how that clarified butter sort of glistens it? Now that's a good looking steak. It's like such a sweet steak, but it's not even close to too sweet. It's like candy meat. It's not burnt at all. And the flavors throughout that steak. Little caramel notes going through it. Now Now, Peter used to serve it with like a béarnaise sauce, and I think it was like a trio of sauces. I never even used them. This is, to me, like the perfect creation in steak, and you would never want to like muddy it up with a sauce. And it's one of the best crusts you're ever gonna get on a steak. Enough yapping. You wanna grill this for you and your family this year? Recipe is gonna be down in the description. That's all I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself. Go feed yourself.